Hi, this is Neil. I have one programming note before we jump into this week's municipal panel. The big issue at City Hall was the introduction of a new draft zoning bylaw. Now, the panel talked about that draft. However, we had a file corruption issue and the recording did not save. So next week, we will be revisiting that issue. In the meantime, here is this week's municipal panel. This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. My name is Neil Saravandamutu. Today is Monday, the 7th of April. We are here talking about the last week in Ottawa City politics. Today we're going to be talking about new draft policies that have come out of the city. We're also going to be talking about what the mayor has been up to with other mayors. And finally, we will have our lightning round where we respond to your questions and comments. As always, I am joined by John Willing. Welcome, John.
Hello, Neil.
And we are joined today by a very special guest. So Sarah MacFarlane of iPolitics and Ottawa Compass. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell us about iPolitics and Ottawa Compass.
Absolutely. So iPolitics is an online publication covering federal politics here in Ottawa and also in Queen's Park in Toronto. But we've also opened up a local news initiative with Ottawa Compass. We have one in Barrie as well, but I'm here in Ottawa. So I get to help out with both sides, cover City Hall and some of the big issues and city building efforts that are going on in Ottawa. We've sort of carved out a bit of a niche for ourselves with the intersections of other levels of government. And as I like to say, if we're going to blame somebody, let's know where to direct that. So potholes, city, schools, province.
Great.
And just how they all impact each other.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This week, Mayor Sutcliffe held a public event with his Gatineau counterpart, Maude Marquis-Bisonnette. They had some common demands for the federal government, and in fact, for whoever forms the next federal government. Sarah, you reported on this story. Tell us about what happened. What were those demands?
So the mayors did not hold back, and Mayor Sutcliffe has been telling us that he had this in the works pretty much as soon as the election was called, that he wanted to work together to find a shared vision for the National Capital Region. And that shared vision has resulted in 8 priorities that both mayors are they're looking for the federal leaders to address, and they want to make themselves clear for whoever is going to form the next government.
Okay. So what specifically were the priorities that they want?
Well, I don't think they will come as a surprise to anyone who is familiar with Ottawa. The first one up at the top of the list is to revitalize the downtown.
Okay, downtown revitalization.
Ottawa and Gatineau, of course, they are both looking for support with repurposing vacant office spaces and reviving the downtown cores.
Okay.
After that, we're looking for fair payment in lieu of taxes payments.
Pilts.
Oh, we love talking about pilts on the
You're
pod.
up.
Oh my goodness. No, we've got into the pilts in previous pods, but for people who don't know what that is, it's payments that the city receives in lieu of property taxes, which aren't directly paid by the upper governments to the municipality.
And a programming note, we've done 5 of these episodes. We have mentioned pilts in 3 of them.
All right.
Okay, Sarah, back to you. What's the next demand?
So the next one is this one. This is an interesting one. To support for public service workers. They're looking for the federal government to support retraining programs for the workers who have been laid off as part of the federal programs and that kind of thing, which is interesting. Many consider that to be a federal issue, but of course here it's a very local issue when our economy relies so heavily on that. After that, we have, no surprise, support and investment for affordable housing and preventing homelessness.
Okay.
They weren't super clear about what that looks like, but the current government has been putting investment into that, so we know what it could look like. And then they are looking for better representation and regional governance within the National Capital Commission.
And I believe they want voting seats on the NCC board, right?
It's a common refrain from the 2 municipalities that they want a vote around the NCC table. Yes.
Have they been asking for this for a long time?
Oh yeah, you know what, and we can talk about whether that's unique that the 2 mayors from both sides of the river get together and have these requests or demands. And it's not that new, because when Jim Watson, the former mayor, became mayor, I remember him a couple of years after that, when Maxime Penneau-Jobin became Gatineau mayor. Those 2 really were seen all the time calling on the upper governments the federal government mostly, to do things. So I remember when Maxime Penneau-Jobin, I think it was 2013, was elected, I I remember there was a great push by Watson at the time to work together to call on the feds and the NCC to do things. One of the things was to get more representation at the NCC board. I think there was a hope to have a vote from the municipalities around the table, but eventually they got representation in that they could sit at the table but not vote. So that's one of the wins, but they didn't get a complete win at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know what? And speaking of you know, the two current mayors getting together and having an action proposal, I guess it's not unique. I remember Watson and Penot-Jobin did have, I believe they released a survey in, I want to say 2019, to the federal candidates that spoke to regional issues, because we are so intertwined as two cities. The first thing that comes to mind is transportation. Of course, the workforce too. Our taxpayers and Gatineau's taxpayers, they're all working many of them work for the federal government. So any decision by the feds really impacts the people who live in those communities. But transportation is such a big thing, right?
Well, hang on a sec. Transportation, was that one of their demands, Sarah?
That's for sure. That they're looking for funding for public transit projects. Long-term funds was the key also, not just sort of blanket grants and that kind of thing. And they named projects like LRT Stage 3 and the Gatineau Tramway. So, you know, projects on either side that really a lot of these work together, right? Affordable housing and downtown revitalization and public transit. It's all connected. Yeah,
but it's interesting. So two big transit projects that they're advocating for. So the Gatineau Tramway, which would come across the Portage Bridge and onto Wellington Street, connecting largely Aylmer, going out to Aylmer and coming across to Ottawa, but then also asking for funding on the Ottawa side for LRT 3, so out to Canada and out to Barrhaven. So that is the extension, the dream of the extension that never dies, eh?
It's true. And we're going to talk about the transportation master plan here. It's a great segue, actually. Neil.
Well, you couldn't have said it better than me, John.
Yeah. Well, and it informs exactly this about how much money is available from the upper levels of government to pay for the hopes and dreams of the city of Ottawa and, of course, the city of Gatineau, too, when it comes to that side of the river.
And that nice big gap in the 2025 budget left for the upper levels.
Yeah, so they wish.
Yeah. Although I will say, just before we switch gears, that the final priority was just investment in infrastructure for climate resilience, but not a lot not a lot of information was given on that. But we can assume, you know, with the really, you know, sustainable approaches to public transit and, you know, the electric fleet, that kind of thing, that could be connected as well.
That's really interesting, because that's not actually a topic we've heard a lot of coming out of the mayor of Ottawa. We haven't heard that coming out of the city of Ottawa as a very high priority. So I suspect that's something that, you know, is being pushed by the Gatineau side. My speculation?
And a lot of these things that, you know, the municipalities would like to see, you know, they rely on the NCC, right? Yeah. So when we talk about transportation, we talk about active transportation connections between the two cities. You know, we saw the William Commander Bridge has opened up in recent years. That's one project that has happened. But I think those two mayors, I assume they would like to see more active transportation links between their two cities as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, we're on the topic of transportation. The city released a new draft, actually a draft of their updated transportation master plan. And I think it's going to council in July. Now, the transportation master plan. So Sarah, there was a ton of material here, and this is like the master plan for the next 25 years of everything the city wants to do, right? Like what is its network? I think they call it the needs-based network. Yep. Then they talk about these are the priority projects also. So there was a ton of material there. What do we make of it?
There is a ton. Some is vague. Some projects have already been committed to. It's a lot to wade through. And I always say that, you know, that they could do a better job of making it accessible, but then I would be out of a job. So essentially some key features, you know, they're looking at active transportation, they're looking at the transit network, and they're looking at roads. So tons of investment. Part 1 was approved by City Council, and that included that was April in 2023. So they already approved a lot of active transportation ideas. So
and
things,
some policies too,
yes,
right?
Policies. So things like the pedestrian network and cycling and that kind of thing.
And so now we're talking about the actual projects, right?
Yeah. The capital infrastructure plan.
Okay. John, have you had a chance to look through those projects by any chance? Like, anything that's like, and I should say that in all fairness to all of us and everyone else, they've just released this document to the world, right? It's not like there's been a committee discussion on it. It's just simply, it's out there, spend your weekend however you like.
Yeah. Like, yes, us like municipal policy nerds spend our weekends, we read these reports, right? I didn't go through every single project, but the things I like to look for are some of these big aspirational projects or the big projects that have been constantly on the books or in the vision. So I'm talking about LRT extensions.
Yeah.
And so I saw that the draft TMP talks about $13 billion in what they call the needs-based transit network, $13 billion. But it has to be put in the documents. The TMP is, I don't like to get biblical, but it is like the transportation Bible for the city that needs to be followed, or they try to follow it. But that's a big number. I think the needs-based roads budget, for people who want to compare, is about $1 billion.
Actually, that's the priority roads.
Priority roads.
And the needs-based roads is 2.7.
Okay.
And actually, sorry, but just coming back to the transit, do you remember how much of that is LRT3? Because it's quite a lot, right?
Oh, boy, LRT3.
Like
so we're
more than half of it or something.
Yeah,
right?
so that would be going down to Barrhaven Town Center and going out to Stittsville, too. And it's a big number.
It is a big
number. With all the
number.
stations in between as well.
Yeah.
So I think that the number for, and again, these always change. This will be outdated in a week. But that line 1 extension to Barrhaven and line 3 extension to Hazeldean, not including any of the infill stations, was $8.3 billion.
8.3.
Yeah.
So let's go build it.
And, to your point about these numbers going up, I mean, that's gone up quite a lot since we last talked about how much LRT3 could cost. I remember it was more in the $5 billion range, right?
Single digits for sure. Since the last time I was covering City Hall on a daily basis, it was in that. So you can see how inflation impacts the numbers if you don't start building right away.
Can I ask the two of you, as I say, it hasn't been discussed at council, but there's certainly been no shortage of commentary from the public on social media and elsewhere. What have been some of the initial reactions? Sarah, do you want to get us started with what you've seen?
Yeah, it's not good. I haven't seen a lot of positive feedback. Now, they are in the public consultation phase. That is what they're looking for, and they're getting it. Something that I see often is people who maybe live on the outskirts of the city want better roads. They want to address congestion and traffic and that kind of thing. They're not happy. And the people who want to, forget the roads, invest in active transportation and transit, they are also not happy. So it looks like everybody is saying, there's a lack of imagination, a lack of ambition, a lack of following through on some of the promises, but also it's a big price tag. So it becomes one of those things that, but yeah, there's a lot of that whole thing where they say we're widening Prince of Wales and people say, I want you to widen my street. So
fix the pothole outside my street. We get about $13 billion for LRT, right?
It's that constant, the car versus the e-scooter.
Yeah. And that point about ambition, that's a theme that I saw a lot also in terms of some of the initial reaction to it. And I have to say I share it because if you think about to our official plan upon which the Transportation Master Plan is supposed to be derived, our official plan said that by 2046, like in 25 years from now, over half of all our trips will be taken by quote unquote sustainable transportation, meaning transit, cycling, walking, or carpooling. And the number that they aspire to in the Transportation Master Plan doesn't even meet that level. I think it goes up to 48%. Like they're not even aiming for that 50% target. And so I know that a lot of people that are hoping for new ways of getting around the city are a little bit disappointed that we didn't even aspire to what we are supposed to aspire to
in the official plan.
Yeah.
And I saw that in the TMP draft documents. They're starting to talk about the origin destination survey from 2022. And they're starting to say, okay, well, the origin destination survey, I think, was having something like 43% of trips done by sustainable means. And so let's try to beat that instead. rather than aspiring for the vision we have in our official plan. So maybe they're moving the goalposts a bit. I'm not quite sure. But I see some honesty, I suppose, in the draft document too, how staff are talking about, traditionally in the suburban trisects or suburban areas of the city, it's hard to build a culture of high amounts of transit and active transportation use. Of course, then someone would say, well, if you build it, of course they'll start using it. But the city, I think, is trying to temper expectations a bit on this. And perhaps that's why we're seeing this 48% come up.
Yeah. One thing that surprised me was how quickly our cost estimates are going up. Because it seems that like every time we blink, we get a higher cost for these projects. And I'd love to, I don't know I'd love to know what's going on there. Is it that we're just being, what is the phrase they use? An abundance of caution?
Well, one thing when you're a government, you don't want to under budget because when the price tag comes in and it's over budget, you could lose government, number one, and you could be booted out, or people are just upset. And then there's a big outcry and you know what happens then. So why aren't we being more ambitious, I guess, is the question with our TMP. And I think it comes down to money, and we need the upper government's money to make these things happen. It just can't come from the property tax base. And so there's an unknown there.
Yeah. I wonder, too, how much things have been impacted by the LRT and the public's view of the LRT and how that whole project changed over time and how much the public's view of it and trust in OC Transpo and, public transit here really went down, and whether they're trying to play it safe now. They don't want to overpromise. I mean, we saw it even with the opening of the O Train South Extension, that they gave themselves lots and lots of time, and so far things are going smoothly. So I wonder if they're just trying to take it slow and do baby steps, and that bugs some people, but for others it might be refreshing rather than to under-deliver.
Okay, so Sarah, when does this come forward for a decision, and when can people like John and I go and complain?
Well, I'd look forward to seeing you there. It will go to a transportation committee, and then if passed there to council in July. Right now they're in the public consultation period. So, there's a nice big Reddit thread on it, but I would argue that the way to, have yourself heard would be to write to a counselor or, use the public forums.
and I think there's actually open houses happening across the city, like starting almost right away.
Yeah. There have been some already, and they're continuing that. Yes.
Okay, great. And so for anyone interested, you can find all that information on Engage Ottawa. Okay.
Yes.
Ooh.
So.
It means it's dinner time. God, no.
Dinner time.
Still waiting. Yeah.
What does that mean, John?
It's the lightning round.
It's
Sarah.
the lightning round. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to remind you that as we move to the lightning round, we've got 60 seconds panelists for each question. And today I will be watching the clock.
Okay, well, I have to say, I've watched this podcast before, and you never stick to the 60 minutes. So.
Producer Henry is like over there going, that's the 10-4, Sarah. Right?
All right. Today's going to be different. All right, Sarah, you're going to start us off. You're on the right foot, too.
Oh, no.
Okay, the Ottawa Carleton District School Board has walked back many of its previous proposals to change school board boundaries. What do you think caused this? Was it pushback from parents, or was it something else?
It was the pushback. Done. How was that?
Okay,
3 seconds.
All right.
They said, they said that they had heard from over 10,000 staff, students, community members, teachers, parents who had said this isn't going to work. So they are pulling back on a lot of things. One of those things is they're going to allow parents to request exemptions on basis of sibling situations. That was one of the biggest issues, was kids being separated from their siblings. And so parents will be able to submit a request for that, and among other things.
Okay.
How am I for time?
You're doing very well.
5 seconds.
Okay,
Nice.
good. John, so the mayor was at a big event this last week at the Ottawa airport, and it was an event to welcome the return of Air Canada's direct Ottawa-London flight. So welcome the people that were coming off that plane.
Right.
My question for you is, given the state of transit in this city, given the state of congestion, is this not a little bit of a
let them eat cake moment.
Like, welcome, air travelers. Board our, maybe the bus will come. We don't know. No, you know what, Neil? I think it's innocent enough. I think it's in the vein of like economic development. I just want to know if people who came off the plane boarded the O train to come downtown, or if they hailed an Uber, or took another non-sustainable means of transportation. I don't know, but I think in the name of economic development, I can see why the mayor would.
Yeah.
Were the reporters following them their whole route to the hotel? That's what I want to know.
Next time, right?
Yeah.
Next time.
Well, listen, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are very happy to have another direct flight back to Europe. I know other people thought, let's deal with some local issues first. But in any case, I got to say, I'm glad that we've got that flight back. So, Sarah, Mayor Sutcliffe was in Washington, D.C. this week, meeting with other mayors from the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Presumably, they were talking about tariffs. So what was that all about? And was this a good use of the mayor's time?
Well, that's subjective. That depends on who you ask. Were they talking about tariffs? I hope so. I hope that's what they were doing. Mayor Sutcliffe did an op-ed in the local paper recently about it. He said that they all were unanimous in their opposition of the tariffs and the impact that it will have, and that it gave him hope that there could be a bipartisan approach to this because people from all areas were on the same page. Will it make an impact? I don't know. Did he walk up to Trump face to face? I wish he did, but I think that there have been any criticism that argues that he doesn't have that much of an impact, or what could this have really done. I think that we have seen provincially, at least, that right now people like to see their leader doing something. So.
Sarah, I'm going to cut you there before I ding you.
I was close.
I'll make up for it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay, John. So last week we talked about LRT secrecy, and there was another in-camera meeting of council this week to talk about phase 1 legal issues. Did we learn anything new?
No.
Okay.
Ding.
Moving on.
That's my answer. Quickly, there were no motions coming out of it.
Yeah.
There's no information. There's no reporting. Did we learn anything new? No.
Okay, very good. Sarah, let's go back to you. The Finance Committee is reducing the property tax rate on rental buildings built before 2001. So is this good news for people living in these older apartment buildings?
I think so. If council passes it, I don't see it, running into any issues. We're looking at the ratio going from 1.4 to 1. And so, some quick math people could save more than $150 a year. Landlords can't pocket that margin. And for someone paying $2,000 a month, they'd be paying about $16 less a month. So, every little bit counts in this kind of thing. And it's going to be phased over a couple of years. So it might not be a super quick change, but.
Right. And I think it's really important there that there was that provision, as you mentioned, that landlords are not able to pocket that reduction in tax rate. So that's a very good thing to see.
And just quickly, I remember this going back years. I remember former Councillor Alex Cullen would come to committee all the time, asking for this, and I don't know if this must make him happy that this is happening.
Well, when I was a student living in the Glebe and all of those old multi-residential buildings, if you can't control your own thermostat, it's nice if you pay like $16 less a month, right?
All right. That means we are at the end of the lightning round. So looking forward, I don't know if either of you have had the chance to look at the council calendar for next week or have heard of anything else that might be going on. But is there anything that's caught your eye that City Council will be dealing with next week?
Nothing in particular, not yet. The agenda's not public yet. So until that goes up, not.
Or actually, I guess we're talking about this week by now, right? Sorry, this week.
Yeah, this week.
This week.
But they were also saying that they might reschedule it because they had to do that special meeting last week. So we'll see. I mean, I think the lines are getting crossed all over the place. There's an election happening.
Yes.
There's going to be a by-election, and everyone just got over a provincial election. So there's a lot happening right now.
The one thing I did notice is that Transit Committee is meeting, I think tomorrow, Tuesday, by the time you're listening to this podcast. And Transit Committee is always exciting.
We have a different definition of exciting, Neil.
There are always delegations.
Yeah, there's always like when. Yeah. But actually, one thing that's coming forward that I've seen is Riley Brockington is has put forward a motion that is going to be discussed about We need better reporting on the reliability of transit, because transit has this goal of 85% reliability. And Riley's saying, what is our plan to get to that level? So I'm really curious to hear what they say about that.
Yeah, we're going to hear from, I assume, the GM, Renee Amilcar, to find out if her staff can put together a new reporting, I guess, plan to give councillors more, well, the public, more information about how their bus is arriving on time or not on time.
Yes.
And then also, on the transit, in a couple of weeks, on the 27th, the new ways to bus will kick in. And so I'm interested to see how that unfolds and whether they're able to get the word out enough so that people are not stranded at bus stops that no longer exist.
Yeah. But I have to say, it's amazing that even when there's not a lot on the calendar that's showing, something will come up. Of that, we can be
happening.
sure.
Oh, no doubt about it. I think there's an NCC board meeting in April, too.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Henry, can you please bring me from that camera over to this one? All right, there we go. So listen, that is our show for this week. I want to thank all of you for joining us. As always, we'd love to hear from you. If you've got a comment, please leave that on Substack, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you find us. I would like to thank our panelists. So I'd like to thank John. I'd like to thank Sarah for joining us today. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank our producer, Henry. And of course, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We will be back in 7 days.